All right, everybody, welcome on back for another fantastic edition here of Traders Talk, our live weekly workshop, which we almost always host live exclusively in the Cybergroup Trading Room. For today, a one-time only special, perhaps, for all of us joining on social media, Facebook Live and YouTube. Welcome on aboard. For all of us on social media, in fact, if you guys can give me a quick sound check just to begin, make sure all of you guys can hear me loud and clear. All of us inside the live trading room, I know that we're good to go. So I look forward to this, folks. Here in Traders Talk, this is a live, not to say advanced, but more intermediate Q&A session where you tend to see our call outs live inside our trading room, seeing some of the big profits being posted. Well, here in Traders Talk, this is really the 1 hour out of the entire week inside the trading room that we provide actual content, real instruction and education as far as why we're making these call outs and, how to manage these stocks as you're entering and as you're exiting. So, for all of us in social media, one thing I will personally do right away, I will look to post my email address. My name is Josh Levitan. I've been here with Fausto and Cyber Trading University for over 6 years now. If you guys have any questions as you go through this Traders Talk workshop, please send over an email right to me. That is at josh@ctutrading.com. So with that in mind, folks, typically in Traders Talk, what we'll do here inside our trading room is do more of a group style review of, some trades that were sent over. So for all of our students who are currently enrolled into our course, we encourage you folks, especially right upon enrolling, to begin to send over your trade journals to us. We distribute and send our journals to you for you to fill out. And, within the first 4 weeks or so of your enrollment, we really encourage you to send your trades over on a week-to-week matter. It would give us a much greater ability to see what you're doing on your own, and of course to help you out at the same time to see what you could be doing more of or less of, what we could be focused more on, and so forth. So with that, normally I would actually go through trades from this morning, Tuesday the 20th. The PPSI, even this stock made a huge pop. So there's a lot of ways, a lot of different stocks I can go over. I told all of us inside the trading room yesterday, though, that there were a few stocks I was going to hit on from yesterday, from Monday. So let's do that. We'll kind of just go from start to finish, at least from the pre-market, working our way through Monday altogether. So the first stock I wanted to go over, now this was one that was on our morning watch list yesterday. The stock BIMI, B-I-M-I. I don't know. I've never really traded the company before. But with that, let me ask for all of us, even on social media, and of course, those of us in the trading room as well. Did you guys trade the stock? If so, just type the letter Y in the chat boards. I have a couple of entries sent from students, but aside from those students, I want to know if anyone ended up trading this stock at all, pre-market, the market open. And Pat, Kathy, Grant, Giancarlo, Gene, Ron. Oh, nope, not Ron. But Abdallah says yes, and a lot of us all together, right? So, with that, the news on BIMI, like, why did this stock make such a big pop yesterday in pre-market? It exploded from 2 all the way up towards near 450. Well, the news that came out, I'll do a quick copy and paste. And I was pretty shocked because normally a company would not really make this significant of a jump up off of earnings. So BIMI, I copied and pasted for all of us live on social media inside the trading room, just the news snippet, the headline I got from Benzinga Pro. Normally a company makes like a 8, 10, 12, 15% move, around there, up or down off a strong earnings report. Of course, sometimes more, sometimes less. But, to see the stock make like, what was it, like a 75, 80% move early in pre-market, that's extremely rare. So with that, well, let's take a quick look to see what happened in pre-market before all this dump off occurred. It goes to show first and foremost that, a positive news report, seeing a stock make a big pop one day doesn't mean it's going to be a great swing trade. So for all of us in social media, all of us in the trading room, of course, know this at this point, but all of us in social media, keep in mind, we're not swing trading these. We're not holding on to these day over day. We're not just, buying the news and that's it. Our whole philosophy here at Cyber Trading University is to follow the smart money, right? You hear Fausto himself say that all the time in his webinars weekly. Follow the smart money. And in fact, Fausto often shows, a very important tool, the NASDAQ total view, right? So, for George and Juan and David on social media tuning in live, if you've been watching Fausto's webinars, you should certainly, find that familiar, right? The NASDAQ total view. Well, my NASDAQ total view is built into my platform from TradeStation here. It's actually on the far right side. It's called the TradeStation Matrix. So this is what we also nickname level 3. It serves the exact same purpose. I just want all of us in social media to know before I even dig into this trade, because as I go through, well, I won't be using the book view or NASDAQ total view for that matter. So, that's what I typically use to read the volume, the big orders on the bid and the ask. So this stock popped at what, like 8 o'clock, 8:30, made that famous 8:30 move that Fausto often talks about inside our trading room. So of course, once it makes the pop, we would hope to see this make a new run up. So with that, what we'll do is kind of jump back on the order book. We'll jump back on the chart and time and sales as well. Ultimately on this trade, I did have one student try and trade this from the pre-market. I think it was a couple of positions that they took. So let's just go over exactly what happened here, at least with the move up and down leading into the market open. All right, so with that, you could see pretty much right around, what was this, 8:48 Eastern time? Well, of course, it makes a new high, it pops, but with the pop comes big volume getting filled. And, similar to the line or the adage of following the smart money, the saying that I go with is when we see a big volume level get filled, we're likely to see a pretty big result from it. It's not as if we're going to see this big volume spike and then for the stock to just move in a tight range across the next hour. It's going to pop and run, or it's going to totally go the other way and crash. A lot of these stocks in pre-market off of news, and well, ultimately we see it on BIMI here today and yesterday, they dump off. So where we see a big volume level get filled like that, I am certainly hoping to see a big move. And with the breakout up, I'm expecting or hoping to see a big move up. So let's jump into the time and sales here. This was right at 8:48 Eastern time yesterday. All right, there we go. And with that, let's just dig into the big volume spike to begin right here at 8:48 Eastern time. Just do a quick little tape read. So pretty much, of course, the top, the resistance on the chart that was holding so well, was right off 350. So you could see at least here when it moves up to 350, there's some buying getting filled under the level. Here's a lot of buying filled at the level. And very quickly, of course, as you see on the chart, it pops and breaks out upward. More green getting filled on the time and sales. Some red coming into natural profit taking, some selling coming in off the top, perhaps. Now, at this sequence, at least at 8:47 Eastern time, I personally would be saying, well, this needs to hold over 350 really well. If it doesn't, or if it just breaks below the level momentarily after, that's where I can imagine this being more of like a pop and drop, a pump and dump type move. Of course, those false breaks happen. 350 is a very big level just based on the chart. But with that, we ended up seeing big volume get filled at that price too, right? So from there, it started to make its move up. Now, I had mentioned I had a trader that had sent me some trades on this. So, I never mentioned, by the way, for all of us inside the trading room at least, I never mentioned anyone's personal name or information, anything like that, just the entry and exit, that's all. So, this student ended up jumping in. The time was at 8:56 Eastern time. So that's about, 8-9 minutes after this spike happened. The major volume level to watch was right off 350. It pops, it holds over it so well. Well, we end up seeing an entry on this. This student jumped in at $3.75. The time is at 8:56 Eastern. Well, it's actually right before this next spike that comes in. So their entry price was right off 375, I think. 375 or 376. So in terms of just trading this stock from one level to the next, it's a little bit in no man's land. It's a little bit in a consolidated area. Perhaps one thing maybe to think about is like it ended up popping, I think, from this price. This seems to be 375. It was holding it a little bit. So their entry was technically right there over that little peak. Now, just showing you guys here, I'm going to bring up a program called Bookmap. For anyone on social media, just new to Cyber Trading University and these live streams. Whereas we always talk about level 3, this program I'm about to show, Bookmap, is what we ultimately nickname level 4. So I'm going to show this heat map type program to you guys here. And where I say this is kind of in no man's land, you could see there's the resistance 340, 350, a lot of volume getting filled right here, this dot. But otherwise, our next big level to watch was ahead at $4, right? $4, $4, major resistance. Well, they ended up jumping in. The time is at 8:56 Eastern. They were in at 375. As I brought up, though, a couple of minutes later, it ended up making a big push up. So I'll drag my program back here as I go back and forth to it. But this student ended up jumping out on this trade at 409. So they ended up picking up just about, 34 cents on this trade. I find that to be excellent. Now, the time of their exit was at 8:59 Eastern time, right? So, it ended up popping, broke above the whole number resistance at 4. It was a little shaky around thereafter. So, with all good reason, they ended up getting out. In fact, they even ended up getting out above 4, above the whole number here. So, they might say that they left money on the table. They made $51 on this trade. They were only trading 150 shares. So, really, if this was 1,000 shares, then that's where you could walk away with your day's pay, or even 500 shares. You could walk away with a significant profit on a 34-cent trade. Now, though, here's where things got a little messy. They were a little frustrated by this trade coming up next. So they ended up taking another trade on this. This was at 9:07 Eastern time. So about 8 or so minutes after they got out, they jumped back in. They saw it pushing up. They might have felt as if they were leaving money on the table. They wanted to make more. So they jumped in. The price was at $4.19. And again, that was at 9:07 Eastern time. The exit, well, the exit was at 9:20 Eastern time. Kind of hiding what happens here on this trade. It ended up beginning to pull back a lot further, right? So what happened on this position that we could better help this trader out on? Well, the same to be said. I'm focused on the big volume support and resistance. I'm focused on any big iceberg orders from level 3 and, of course, from level 4, that program I just brought up. I'm focused on the big volume spikes in my chart because that will reflect time and sales, the tape, right? So, that's ultimately what I need to keep my focus on going into the next 30 minutes prior to 9:30. With this pushing up higher, of course, it's likely to still go. But with this pushing up as well as it has, it really hasn't made too many nasty shakes after 9 a.m. Looks like this was the nastiest one that popped right away after to make a new high. So that's where we have to identify where's resistance on this trade. Where do we have any big iceberg orders on this, if there are any? And from there, ultimately, we need to follow directions. So I'll bring up a very common line that I typically say in these Traders Talk workshops in just a moment. But how about this? For all of us inside our live trading room, I want you guys to answer this question for me. Where do we have major support and resistance on this stock here? Looking at Bookmap, this level 4 program, where do we see dark orange or red lines going across this book? Across this picture, I mean. One right here, right? Mark S is saying support at 360. Hey, that's a 59,000 share order that was on the bid. That's huge. That's really big. I mean, that's an iceberg, right? We had one at 4, which broke. A little shaky around 4 before it popped higher. But after that, we have resistance on the ask, right? This is what I was asking. Where do we have a dark red or orange line? Well, 360 support, that 59,000. And then here at 425, there's maybe 10,000, maybe 8,000 shares, 7,000 shares right below it. That seems to be a resistance, though. All right. So with this entry at 9:07 Eastern, well, I would say it's a little close to resistance. It pulled back. It pushed up, and then the time of the entry was at 9:07 Eastern time. So it actually popped above 425 here, right? It broke through this resistance. It was pushing up a little bit more from there, but it started to pull back. So it seems like this stock wasn't really holding levels too well, from level 3 or even the chart. It was, showing patterns of higher lows, pushing up to make higher highs. So this student ended up jumping in at $4.19. It was actually after it broke above 425 here. So it wasn't as if they entered right here, wasn't as if they entered right here. They entered pretty much, I think, right here. And at least it goes to show they were up on the position a little bit. They were up about 20 cents, for a short while. It was probably a very fast move up here. And then it started pulling back down, right? So, this is the same scenario that I had said from before. If it's not breaking higher, there's only one other way the stock is going to go. That's, what I'll say in any situation like this, where we see a stock continuing to push up across a given time of day or time frame here. It broke above $4.25, which we had as a resistance. You can see it held under that price right before the pop, and things started to get shaky right away after, right? So I will say this student definitely had some time to get out. Once we're in this trade, we need to see this break over 425 again. It wasn't the biggest resistance, out there. It wasn't the biggest iceberg order, so to say. But we not only need to see it break over 425 again, we got to see it hold as support. A strong resistance is likely to create a strong support. So you could see what happened. It was, making these like lower highs. It was like in a range. It was holding over 4 at least. But if it's not breaking out higher here, there's only one other way the stock is going to go. Of course, stocks go sideways, folks, but we don't trade the sideways move. So the longer it goes sideways, that's where I say, if it's not going to pop up, it's just going to drop. So I think this student, all in all, they had a little time to get out some profit. That's not the part I really want to focus on here. It's more the fact that they didn't really set up an exit plan underneath them. I feel like that's the case at least. So, I could talk to this student tomorrow in a coaching session, which I know that we're going to be doing anyway. But nonetheless, they ended up selling a little bit after the fact. They got out at 368. So for the 34-cent profit that they made on the first catch, wiped out all of it and some, right? They said that they didn't sell yet because the stock just kept going down. So that does, right away confirm to me that they didn't really have an exit plan in mind as it was just in this consolidation. All right. So, there's always there's always lines that I'll frequently say in these workshops, in my phase 1 and 2 classes, when I do the afternoon broadcasts, and that goes, on social media every day. If it's not breaking higher, only one other way it's going to go. Norman here inside our trading room is saying, hey, just set a stop just in case you can't get out. That could help. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Norman. And you know what? Hey, what if it breaks under 4? Like right here, what if it breaks under 4 and then right away after, like immediately after, it pops right back above it? From there, I'd say that could be the next buying opportunity. And you know what? I'm just thinking right off the top of my head here with setting a stop. Of course, I should have mentioned this right from the top. Yes, you cannot set a stop here in pre-market. Getting tripped up with the market open. Yes. So with that, you wouldn't be able to set a stop. Then you know what? One thing to do would be then this. Ready? I'll show you what to do in that case. And we'll be talking about this, guys, actually this week in class. In the phase 2 stock course, what we'll be doing is talking about managing trades, setting stops, taking profits, and in the event of pre-market trading here, well, you can't set a stop. So, what you could be doing is, at least if you're in this trade, from 419, if you were to see this stock begin to pull back, one thing to do is, perhaps just type a price in on your level 2 or on your order execution bar. Let's just say underneath 4, at 397 or 398. It's almost like a manual stop limit order where you have your finger over the cursor. You're watching the stock. You're like hawking it and making sure it pops or makes this next move up. Because if it doesn't, well, you have your finger on the trigger here. And when it begins to pull back more, this order should be able to get you out ahead of time. There is, of course, chances where it can, drop very fast and you might be a microsecond too late and, it might blow through that price. That always is possible. But the same to be said with using a stop limit order as well. All right, so let's see here. This isn't the only BIMI talk I want to go through here, guys. I had a trader take this in the afternoon, or actually after the market opened, this BIMI stock. So, once it pulled back leading into the morning, I would expect for it to continue, just given the fact that it was up so much in pre-market. You know what? It ended up pulling back. It ended up breaking under 360 and right back over 360. That's the exact type of under and over move I would have looked for, perhaps. But, going into the open here, the final 8 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm not trading. I'm out. I'm not holding anything into the market open. So, for me personally, I would just rather wait to see what happens after the first 5 minutes. We always tend to see shakes and big erratic moves after the, 9:30 market open. So look what happens. It popped up, it pulled back, and then from there, I'll show bookmap again, level 4, because I'm able to go back on it, thankfully, in hindsight. So it'll give us the ability to see what happened with the orders. If there was any big iceberg order after 9:30, after the market opened up. All right, and before I even do that, what we'll do is actually just skip ahead on this time and sales here to 9:30. Now, for all of the students inside the trading room here, why am I doing this? Why am I going right back to exactly 9:30 on the time and sales right now? Of course, the answer is to tape read. But in particular, why do I always like to go back to 9:30 at the market open for every stock that we're trading? We tend to see this big market on open transaction. It's called a market on open print. As I like to nickname it, the opening bell print. All right, well, let's take a quick look, because with the amount of volume filled at that exact price shortly after the market opens up, I would like to think that's going to act as a major level. Let's see if I can get the time frame here. There we go. Finally. Jeez. All right. So one of these things is not like the other. What do you guys see? What's the opening bell print on this time and sales? One of these things is not like the other. I mean, we see a bunch of green, yellow, red, purple, black. It doesn't have to do with the color on the tape. Yeah, look at the size. Look at the size on that, guys. In yellow at 9:30 and 1 second, it's a 112,000 share transaction specific to $3.73. So alongside the big iceberg orders on level 3, the matrix here, and of course we'll show bookmap level 4. Aside from that, time and sales is critical, because that opening bell print, look what happened. Spiked literally right up to that price and dropped like an anvil. That's a big volume level. So, it ended up actually not even making a false breakout. It held under it picture perfect and then tanked. Simple as that. Now, I did have a student that took this trade. It was a little bit later on. So just, after the market opened, that's what we ended up seeing. But it only continued to dump off. The next major level to work with, I would assume, would be off of $3, a whole number support here. Just put the line at right there, basically at 3. Let's see what bookmap brought up here, or bookmap. Let's see what bookmap has. I'll bring it back up. So after the market opened, there's our big transaction, 112,000 share print at 373. It ended up breaking it under a level here at 325, it looks like, roughly 326, 325 just about. That seemed to have been a pretty big level. A strong support like that, if it ends up moving back up to 325, I would like to think that would be a resistance. All right. Now, this trade that got sent to me was from another student. So, I had another student send me a trade on this. They jumped in exactly, I think it was at like 10:57 Eastern time, much later on. It ends up breaking underneath $3. It ends up beginning to push back over 3, right? There seemed to have been an order on the ask here at 296. So once that broke, and ultimately it squeezed over 3, that could have been a nice opportunity to see some movement up, right? Look what happened. It ended up doing just that. It ended up breaking under and over $3 here. It held $3.296 as a really good support. And from there, it started to run back up, right? So one saying that I'll mention here, and that I always say, would be my best entries to buy a stock are directly after they break through a big level going up. So, take that word for word. It broke underneath $3 here, to which, there wasn't really even a dark red line. I just always assume that whole numbers and 50-cent price levels, like 350 here, like $4, those whole numbers and 50-cent price levels are to be major volume-based prices. So with that, it made the move off 3. Well, my student ended up jumping in this trade. It was at 10:57 Eastern time. They got in at $3.14. They got out like 3 minutes later at 3.19, like right before it popped and took off that much more, right? So, hey, they picked up 5 cents. Profit's profit. Is there anything they could have done a bit better on this trade? Well, I'll peel back the book map here again. I'll show my normal charting here for right now. Is there anything they could have done better? Well, I mean, the answer to that is yes, but it's not always just with the exit and leaving money on the table. They ended up jumping in this trade a little bit later on, like I said, and right before they got out here, popped, right? So, of course, they could have stayed in the trade an extra second or two, and they could have made a lot more. But another line that I'll mention here, which I frequently say, is that every trade begins with the entry point. This student left a lot of money on the table, yes. And this is one that is a little bit more apparent. They definitely left it there. But what could we have done better with the entry? Now, that's a bit subjective, because what if this student wasn't watching BIMI right before they ended up jumping in? What if they, heard us talk about it inside the trading room? They turned over to it at the time. They thought it looked good, and they just wanted to jump in. Well, those situations are a little different compared to, if they were watching this stock and if they weren't like fumbling around from stock to stock to stock, and if they had their eyes on this the whole time. Well, if that's the case, then I'd say what they could have done better was really focus on $3 again. Support, it broke it. It held it as resistance, but when it re-broke that level, well, this was the sweet spot to get in. But look what happened here. This is closer to their time of entry. So that's where I could say, hey, maybe if they were watching this a bit more intently or watching this prior to the run up, once it makes that same mini break where it breaks under and over, when it gets right back over 3, I would look to jump in, set a tight stop right over that level in case if it's, pretty weak. Very well, it's easy to say in hindsight what happened here, but hey, if it's not breaking higher here, I'd like to think it's just going to continue to drop. So fortunately, he built support, moved up, more volume got filled on the offer, and thankfully squeezed up a bit more before it ultimately pulled back. But yeah, that's all I'd say on that trade. It ended up moving right up. Look what happened. Actually, wow, this ended up moving all the way back up to the opening bell print off 373. And it goes to show how strong that level was, because once again, we ended up seeing it hold. This time, though, expectedly so, in my opinion, it ended up making a pop, then drop. So, at this time of the day anyway, late morning, early afternoon, we often more see these false breakouts the first time that a big level is getting tested or retested like this the first time. So, it took it about 2.5 hours or 2 hours to make this run back up. The first time this price level gets tested, I would expect for it to hold. Even when it pushes up above it by a penny or two, right? It's easy for me to say that because look what ultimately happened. But for all of us in social media watching this special on YouTube and Facebook Live, well, this happens all the time. So it's easy for me to say this based on the probability. All right, so I think that was pretty much it I wanted to talk about on BIMI, just those two trades. Um, I want to jump ahead though to NIO, right? Well, let me ask on social media, Facebook Live and YouTube here. I would assume that most of us were unfamiliar with this BIMI stock. How many of us are familiar with NIO? All of us inside our trading room are familiar with NIO. I know that. But on social media, Facebook Live, YouTube, anyone there familiar with this NIO stock? I mean, Fausto's been ranting and raving about it over the last. Oh, whoops, that is not NIO, by the way, folks. That is INO. My trader's dyslexia kicked in. There we go. That's the much better looking stock. Jeez, NIO, not INO. It's my trader's dyslexia there. All right. So with that in mind, let me rephrase that question. Anybody on social media familiar with this NIO stock? NIO. It's an electric vehicle company, breaking all-time highs from the last week. Fausto's been ranting and raving about this stock in the morning meetings. All right, bunch of us. Good. All right, so with that in mind, let's just do a full review on this trade, not from today, as much as I can do that. Let's jump back to yesterday. So I had a bunch of trades emailed to me regarding NIO. I'm not going to go over any particular entry or exit as much compared to just what happened after 9:30 when the market opened up. So unlike BIMI, we weren't as keen to trade this in pre-market as much. Very active stock, but that doesn't mean it makes for a great pre-market trade. So, with this stock, we were calling it out more for after the market opened up. We ended up seeing big volume, as I had said from before, but it's to be assumed for every trade. At 50-cent levels and whole numbers, we are likely to see major levels of support and resistance. So, 28.50, 28 when the market opens up. I would assume for there to be a big iceberg order at 28. 27.50, 27. Now we're going to see bigger and smaller orders at each and every price level. So not every 50-cent level or whole number is going to be equally as strong, right? So, I'm just more focused on those price levels as increments to work with. Very, very similar to what I, did on BIMI. I'll jump back on NIO here for the opening bell print from yesterday. And this time here, folks, I mean, this should be a no-brainer right here. This 1.69 million share transaction. Is it a buy? Is it a sell? It's an aggregate. We don't say if it's a buy or a sell there. What we do is focus on the price as a major volume-based support or resistance. So, there could be iceberg orders at other price levels, aside from 50-cent levels and whole numbers. But aside from those iceberg orders, I would just focus on 28.18. Look how well it held here as support. And then once it rebroke it as the market started to move down, look what happened. It made for an incredible short opportunity, right? So that's the first thing I could really jump to on this stock. If it's not breaking higher, once it rebreaks that support, it ended up totally dumping off, right? So really with this, I mean, again, similar with BIMI, the first 5 minutes, we tend to wait, the first at least, 3 or so minutes, we'll sit on our hands, wait to see true market direction. So you could actually see here, at least within the first 2 or 3 minutes after the open, it makes a slam under support here at 28. Big volume spike actually right away after. So there seems to already be a lot of selling coming in at 28. Actually, right here at 9:31, 9:32 Eastern time. Let me just jump ahead there on the next minute. I'll just kind of quickly show you what happened on the time and sales. I don't know how far I'll be able to jump to here. NIO trades so much volume. Yeah, I can't even get that in. All right, let's see if I can scroll back another minute or so. There we go, much better. So look at all of the red here. This is just within the first minute or two. That's it. All of this red on the time and sales, including this guy, a 241,000 share transaction. That's a lot of selling coming in. For every buyer, there's a seller. For every seller, there's a buyer. But right away, upon the first 2 minutes, it's a sea of red. So I would like to think that should we see support re-break later on in the morning, after the first 5 minutes, that perhaps we'll see continuation. Well, it ends up shaking around 28 at first. It could have been a nice little bounce from 28 ultimately. It broke under and then back over 28. It wasn't the perfect hold off support, but hey, it moved up just about 50 cents. Like it moved from 28 roughly to 28.50. Notice what happened when it popped from 28.50 though. Big spike, but it came right back down instantly. False breakout. So if you jump in over 28.50 on NIO there just because you think it's going to push, I mean, the markets haven't dropped off at the time just yet. So, it's a good line of thinking. You have the right idea, but you're clearly on the wrong side of the trade here, right? So I know it's easy for us to sit here and agree on that after the fact, but in the moment, you don't really think about, oh, what happens 30 minutes from then, right? When you see this make the pop and drop, you might think, okay, well, it could just get right back over 28.50 in the next 3 or so minutes. But look what happened 30 minutes or so after, right? So that's where I say when a big volume level gets filled, we're very likely ready to see a big result from it. So with that, we ended up seeing a pop and drop, came right back down, re-broke that support off 28.18, broke down below support off of 28 later on after that, and it was a complete drop off. I wish I personally could say I jumped in from the 28.18 level myself. I think on this trade I went long, then I went short. I waited for this to break back over 28 first. I actually took a long right from 28.02. I remember that entry. But once it re-snapped under 28, I was out. And then actually, shortly after, I went back in on the short side here. I don't want to say I chased it as much, but I took the entry a little bit underneath 28. My entry point was at 27.93 or 27.92 after. So I took a really tiny loss on the long because I realized it just broke right back under 28. And with it re-breaking 28 and the selling that came in to begin, I was led to believe that we're ultimately going to see continuation later on. And that's what we got. So I ended up jumping in short from 27.92. I remember I closed my short out. It was at like 27.65 or so. I didn't take it all the way down to 27.50, which obviously in hindsight I could have. I just took the money and ran right from here, basically. So I avoided this pop back up and drop back down, but, in and out. All right. From there, though, right, and this is where I want to jump to some trades that some students took. So, I had a student jump in and out of NIO a few times. This was more after the market opened up. Let me just see if I could scroll back and get their entries here. Okay, so it was pretty much just one trade, only 100 shares, tiny position. So the money lost isn't the issue, but this student ended up taking, I think, a couple of losses, so it probably frustrated them a bit. They said they entered NIO long. They jumped in at 9:46 Eastern time. Well, it's a minute or pretty much right around the same time that we have this big pop. So it would seem as if they could have been on the right idea. They jumped in exactly at 28.37. So from the chart, it broke above the high of the day, 28.40. They jumped in pretty much like right here at 28.37. From the chart, it's a strong level. I don't mind that entry at all. It's a little close to 28.50, right? That's the first thing I'll say. But in terms of the resistance from the chart, it goes to show it seemed like it was holding pretty well. But obviously, though, what came after was the pop to 28.50, the pullback, and then that's where they ended up getting stuck or in a loss. They got out at 28.22. They took just about a 15-cent loss. They got stopped out. So they said they set a stop 15 cents lower from where they got in. And their exit time on this trade was pretty much right at 9:54 Eastern. 9:54, 9:55 as it's dropping down here, pretty much here. Again, same thing. If it's not breaking higher, only one other way it's going to go. So, as it ended up kind of breaking underneath this support or this resistance that hopefully could become support, that's right. It's very likely say if it doesn't end up just popping right back up very quickly after, just get out. Get out and you could just get right back in on the trade if it gives you the opportunity to. Now, how does this trade give us the opportunity to get back in? Well, obviously, we know what happened after. It broke under 28.18 and continued to drop. But with our lines drawn here, there's only two scenarios I see this going. And obviously, one of those scenarios panned out. So it's to say that this could either re-break over 28.50. And if it re-breaks, we're hoping to see a better move up. So maybe wait for it to re-break above where we had volume at 28.50. Or otherwise, 28.18. Now, with 28.18 and 28, obviously it broke below this line here, and I wish I shorted it from that price. That was the real sweet spot. I told you guys I jumped in from 27.92. But even for this setup here, as I would say, like before my short, I took a small loss on the long side, right? Because it broke under and over 28. I was hopeful from that point that it would squeeze. But if they were watching this NIO trade here, what if, and obviously it didn't happen, but that's where the imagination comes to mind and we have to hypothesize some of this stuff. What if it breaks under 28.18 and right back over it? Is it is it possible to see this, make a run back up from there? Perhaps. My best entries to buy a stock are directly after they break through a big level on the way up. So buying right here is completely irresponsible. But what if it breaks under 28.18 and then instantly right back above it? Well, perhaps that could be the beginning of more support building and for this to make a new run. So obviously that didn't happen, but that could have been a possibility. All right, so I have a comment here from one of us on YouTube, and I want to mention this right now because for all of us inside our trading room already, all of our students who are currently enrolled, well, my belief is that we've gone all through this, at one point or another. So I'm going to restate what this person had mentioned on the social stream on YouTube Live. This person just wrote, "I've been trading for like 5 months, studying from other programs, not to be named, and I still can't be profitable. I'm talking like 8-hour days studying." So for anybody on social media, first off, if you feel similar to how this person who had just posted feels, it's how a lot of us feel once we first start jumping into a whole new trading system. I can't vouch for anyone else aside from Cyber Trading University there. But, if they offer different strategies compared to what we're doing, to jump from one strategy and learn that whole system, and then to go to another and relearn that whole system and strategy, it's a lot. So, if that's the case, and if you're jumping from, education system to education system, and there's complete different, strategies involved, you're doing yourself a disservice, actually, because you're right. It takes a little while for the light bulb to genuinely turn on. And that goes across the board for any type of trading. To show you examples of iceberg orders and, level 3, like here, for example, even live right now. I'm not going to go off too much on a tangent, but live right now, hey, there's a 12,000 share order seller at 28, right? Well, we can consider that resistance. The more that we're able to identify the big volume and the big orders on level 3, then the better we'll be at identifying these major entry or exit, price levels. But with that in mind, though, if you're watching classes and if you're not doing well well, obviously something is wrong. And it could be with them, it could be with you. But with what we offer here at Cyber Trading University is full support. So that's where I had said earlier from, the very beginning of this workshop, for all of our newly enrolled students that, are still green to CTU, that are still going through the phase 1 stock course that we provide, you guys need to send your journals over to us so we could have a better idea as far as what you're doing. We always tell new students upon enrolling to trade small shares. So, if you're losing a lot of money right off the bat, I would suggest right away for you to lower your position size, right? I wouldn't look to risk a lot of money without feeling confident of knowing what's to happen. But at the same time, from there, it's the type of stocks that we tend to, follow that could provide great opportunity or big failure. So for the stocks that you would look to trade with us, at least, we would encourage for you to trade stocks that have great volume on level 3. Looking at, the big orders on level 3 here, like NIO right now. I mean, tight spread, a lot of volume on the book. It makes it just a little bit easier. And little is an understatement. A little bit easier to follow a stock like NIO based on the liquidity compared to, something that was moving from yesterday or today, let's say like, KXIN, I don't know. Wacky spread at times, kind of scarce orders on the bid and the ask. This would be the type of stock that makes a bigger move up or down and a lot faster of a bigger move. So if your eyes aren't trained to react to a faster moving stock like this, then you're likely putting yourself in a riskier position. All right, so there are so many different reasons as to why you might not be doing so well there, and that goes for this student who made that comment just before, or this attendee on social media. At least for us, if you guys would like to learn more about what we offer, just make sure that you guys go right to the link that's on the banner. I'll bring that up right before the end of this workshop at least. All right. Now, I do have a question here from that same person. So I'm going to jump back to the agenda that I had here with NIO and the last stock or last couple I wanted to jump to from yesterday, those trades. But I did have a concern from that same person. They just wrote, but small size positions barely cover commissions. How do you work with that? I mean, that is a really good point. Now, with that in mind, though, most direct access brokers offer zero commission trading. So that's where I would ask what broker or platform you're currently working with. You bring a fair point. I mean, if you're paying commissions on each trade, 100 shares is not going to cut it. That's not going to pay the bills. It, in fact, might make you lose more money. So, or not more money, but you still might not be profitable altogether, just based on the commissions. So that's where I would say I agree. But most direct access brokers nowadays offer zero commission trading. If you're using any sort of offshore broker, I don't know about. I know there are still some web-based brokers or platforms that are commission-based, but most are free. All right, so let's jump back to NIO here. I wanted to go over one more trade that was sent to me on NIO. So this was one from the afternoon now on this trade. So a lot went by afterwards, and we end up jumping to NIO in the afternoon here. Now, for all of us in the afternoon meeting yesterday on NIO, I ended up shorting this stock right before I started, and it was right from 28. So I was saying to you folks just earlier that 28 was a big level. We ended up seeing all of that red on the time and sales once the market opened up. I'm referring to all of this, right? This was right at 9:30. So, from the market open, we knew that 28 was a big level. Now, it does go to show it was being a little bit of a pain in the ass. Really. I mean, it was like breaking over it. Just when we thought it was going to hold support, it broke below it and ended up dropping off further. But when it moved back up here, once again, this could have been a great buying opportunity. It broke above 28. It held under its opening bell print, that 28.18. And from here, I was long on this trade. I said to myself, just as I said to every one of us a moment ago, I swear to you, I said this to myself. If it's not breaking higher, there's only one other way it's going to go. So with this re-breaking 28, I jumped in right away. I reversed my long position. I took like a 1 cent or 2 cent loss, and I went short exactly at 28. So if you guys go back on the afternoon meeting, that's on YouTube, it's on the recording. This was a fantastic drop from that price, right? Dropped all the way down to 27.50. I got out at 27, I think it was like 55 or 57. I didn't wait for the full test. But, from there, I had a student jump in this trade. And for the trades that he also sent me alongside this NIO position, this was, I think, maybe his only loss or maybe one of 2 losses. For the trades he took yesterday, he did pretty good. In and out quick, nothing, as a crazy profit, but consistent profits, and they add up. So I think this was one of 2 losses that he took on NIO. And this one, I will say, I think it was the bigger of the 2 losses. It might have been his biggest trade altogether, profit or loss. He lost 13 cents on this trade. So with that, he jumped in this position on NIO at 3:13 Eastern time, and then he got out at 3:28. He jumped in at 27.66 price and got out right at 27.53. So he took a 13-cent loss. Let's see what happens. It ended up dropping down to 27.50 here. It was pushing up and up and up and up and up. They jumped in the trade, like I had said, 3:13 Eastern time at 27.66. Pretty much here, roughly. So they were up a couple pennies on the trade, not a whole lot. Maybe they were contemplating closing, but it ended up dropping off a bit further. A very quick drop shortly from that point. And once it ended up failing to break higher, it came back down and they got out at 27.53. All right. So on this trade, I think even, and they'll tell me probably this week in coaching, but I think they actually did try to get out with a profit, and I think they had some order rejected. Something happened on the exit where they weren't able to get out with the profit, and once it ended up falling down, they ended up just closing a bit later on. All right, but with that in mind, I will say every trade begins with the entry point. So with that, was this the best entry? Was this, the most optimal entry point to take? So on this NIO trade, it ends up, of course, bouncing from the, 27.50. So we can, in hindsight, say that 27.50 was the best level to enter on this position. But I would say otherwise, because there was another iceberg order that was there on the book. It wasn't just 27.50 here. So with that, I'm going to re-bring up my bookmap program, guys. This was pretty much right at 2:30 or 3 o'clock Eastern time that we ended up seeing this support level break. So this student, I'm unsure if they ended up recognizing this in time. All right. So much like before, same question. Where do we see these big, dark red or orange lines going across the screen? From right to left, where do we see these big, dark, bold, red or orange lines? I mean, one I'll mention, it's more yellowish all the way up top at 28.50. So, that's resistance, right? 70,000 share order. But aside from that, what else do we have? What's a dark red or orange line that we see here? Debbie writes 27.59 roughly, right? My price axis is a little scrunched up, but yeah, she's head on with that. 27.60, 27.59 here. Looks like the iceberg was at 27.60, right? It looks like there's actually a more volume at 27.60 than there was at 27.50. Find that pretty interesting. So on this position, what happens? Well, it ended up holding 27.50 as a base. It didn't even break under it and then over. But what it ended up actually doing was it broke under and over 27.60 here. So their entry point on the trade was at 27.66. And they ended up jumping out a bit later on. They may have had a technical issue getting out, so I have to just ask them about that on the side. They may have been looking to just get out ahead of time, but they didn't. And with that, it ended up costing them a little bit. But with that, I will once again state that this trade begins with the entry point, as does every trade. So that's where I could say if they ended up jumping in right over 2760 here when it makes the under and over move, they jump in at like 2761, 2762. It might sound a little petty, but they're able to maximize the profits a bit more. An extra 4 cents, I'll take it. So, with that, that's where I could say, from 2760, it could have made for a better squeeze at the time. But what happened? It broke below 2760. It held under 2760 after. It peaked back above it, but obviously not the strongest trade at that point heading into the end of the day. So that's all. All right, folks, current time is 12 o'clock. I normally would finish up Traders Talk at this point. For all of us in social media, only got one more trade, a little extra. So we'll just go through one more position here, guys, and then from there we'll conclude Traders Talk. Let's see. From June, he's asking in the YouTube stream. He actually normally joins us inside the trading room. June is asking, it's basically the same as looking at the TradeStation matrix, correct? Yes, correct. Now, the difference here is just that I'm able to show all of this to you in hindsight. My platform, your platform, no one's platform can retroactively go back, on level 3. So just use that to go back at least to show you what happened at that point. All right, last stock I want to go to, folks, is one that, hey, Fausto actually put the airlines on the watch list leading into yesterday morning. I was a little focused on American Airlines, but it wasn't until actually after he finished the meeting. So, I was more intent on trading and watching NIO and like Workhorse, WKHS, some more volatile stocks. This American Airlines stock, it's a slow mover. It's like a level 1 stock as we would categorize it. Really tight spread, huge orders on the book. You see a 36,000 share or 38,000 share order on the ask here at 1290. This is live right now. I would assume ahead when it shows at 13, we'll probably see a big iceberg, big, huge resistance there. So this stock is a great stock for newly enrolled students to work off of. All right. Now, with that, going into the final 5 or so minutes, I said to myself, you know what? I gave this stock as a few students for them to watch. I was focused on some faster movers, but you know what? I'll focus on this too. This is one I'll intently watch and trade with them. So, this one ended up being a decent little push. It wasn't the greatest trade. It wasn't the biggest profit, the cleanest run, but based on Fausto's morning watch list, this is one that was on the list, so to say. And it is one that I personally told a few students to watch too. So, going into the market open, I'm going to keep focused on, of course, the same that we've been focused on, but we'll look to see if there's any big volume levels in a moment. I want to just double check here first just to see if there were any big levels from the chart. For reference, kind of seems, at least, it looks like 1260-ish. Is generally holding as resistance, so perhaps that could be a big level to watch once the market opens. That could be a level potentially to consider, 1260. It looks like we have a few of these spikes after 8 o'clock. Nothing really that truly stands out. Looks like some volume got filled here. Some volume got filled here, right? We'll look into that all in a moment. Now, really quick, I do want to jump back, though, because yesterday was Monday. And with that, we would have to actually go back to, Friday's charting to kind of see what happened from Friday. Now, the reason I bring up Friday here, well, for 2 reasons. One, if there were really strong levels from the past trading day, very well, those levels could still be prevalent going into the morning on Monday. 1240, big resistance, really strong level. I would hope to see this hold as support. Now, it looks like it peaked here roughly around like 1250-ish, 1255. Again, that could be a level to watch. But what I really want to jump to here as we conclude Traders Talk for today is something very similar to what we see at the market open. Typically at 9:30 in the morning, each and every day, for a lot of these name brand stocks and, actively traded stocks from pre-market, we'll tend to see this big opening bell print, right? Well, we'll even jump to AAL from yesterday just to see what that big opening bell print is first. So Monday, yesterday's opening print, 1264. I'll draw a line there just in the meantime. That was the opening bell transaction, as I say, right at 9:30 yesterday. But before yesterday, well, there was Friday. And if you guys see, actually, jump back a bit. If you guys see at the end of Friday, notice this huge spike of volume. So much like 9:30 every morning, at 4 o'clock just about every day, we'll tend to see a market on close transaction. And with that, that is going to act as a big level. Is that going to be support? Is that going to be resistance? Well, that's hinging upon where the stock is the following day. Like, if this is down 10% the following morning out of nowhere, well, this print could very well become resistance. Look at this. At 4 o'clock on Friday, a 560,000 share transaction. That's at 1246, huh? All right. Well, you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm actually going to raise my line here for right now to 1246. So after the market opened, for you folks that were following American Airlines yesterday, well, look what happened. Now you see what happened, right? I mean, this was absolutely flawless support off 1246 in particular. But for me, I ended up entering this trade right here, the sweet spot, when it ended up breaking under 1250, which, again, we would also consider to be a support, a 50-cent level, so to say, right? Well, it broke under 1250 and then right back over it, right? Just to show bookmap one last time, this is AAL, American Airlines, from yesterday morning. Notice there was a 77,000 share order on the bid. If you buy right here, not a good idea. And I know in hindsight, it only dropped just pennies. But it's easy to say this crap in hindsight, right? What if you bought right here and it tanked all the way down to the next key iceberg at 1230? So, we're trying to buy with momentum. We're buying a stock directly after it breaks through a big level, going up. So that was my entry on this trade right off 1250. I ended up getting out on this trade. It was a little bit later on. I could have taken this right to 1264, which again was the opening bell print. So it traded these levels extremely cleanly, which not every stock does. But again, the same pattern happened. It goes to show how strong the stock was off 1250, where it broke under and then right back over. And from there, it made its next move. All right. So with this, the only trade I wanted to go over, at least, I had a student jump in the American Airlines stock. This was right here. They jumped in right over 1264. In terms of the resistance and in terms of the level to watch, right place, wrong time, right? It's the first time that resistance is truly being tested. So I'd anticipate a pop and drop at first. It was moving up steadily. I mean, the same thing happened at 1250, right? It broke under 1250. If you went short here, you could have had the right line of thinking. But obviously, when it rebroke over 1250, you got to get out. So I think this student ended up, taking like a 15-cent loss or 13-cent loss on this trade. It's unnecessary. The second this breaks back under 1264, you got to get out. I would get out instantly. And then right away from that point, re-enter that trade if it gives you the ability to. I know it's easy for me to say that. It did here. It did give you the ability to re-enter on numerous levels. 1250, 1264 off the retest. Obviously, when it breaks higher here, it holds as support, runs back up. So, that's where I say to this student, right place, wrong time. You had the right line of thinking. However, you don't need to risk 13 or 15 cents. Don't let your OCO dictate what you're doing. If it's not breaking higher, there's only one other way it's going to go. And it's not for me to tell you for every time it breaks, out and then right back under the level to instantly get out. It's not for me to say that, but it's for me to tell you, hey, use Fausto's 30-second rule. Use the line that I always say here. If it's not breaking back up soon enough, got to get out. All right. So with that, folks, we are going to conclude Traders Talk for today. And for all of us in social media, I appreciate you guys joining us for this special. We typically do Traders Talk exclusively live in Cybergroup every Tuesday morning at 11:05 Eastern Time. First and foremost, as always, I will say, just make sure that you guys like, subscribe, notify right to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/cybertradingu. At least for today, you guys see the banner on the bottom of the stream, though. So if you guys would like to join us live inside the Cybergroup room Monday to Friday weekdays, make sure that you guys go right to the link that's in the chat board down there below. That's cybertradinguniversity.com/trial. And again, for anything else, guys, please send over any questions, any trades right over to my email address, josh@C2 Trading. Of course, that goes for all of us inside the trading room. All right, folks, take care and enjoy the rest of the day for all of us in social media, for all of us on the trading room side of things. Our next main audio broadcast, I will be doing the afternoon meeting just a couple of hours from now, 2:30 p.m. Eastern.